everyone, my name is Maddie, welcome back to my channel and welcome to this video where I'm kind of just going to be doing a bit of a discussion about mood reading versus TBRs. So for any of you that are new here, I do actually have a TBR game which I do every month called Dart Attack. I will link the playlist down below. And this provides me with a list of prompts to fit books into throughout the month, and I choose those books right at the beginning of the month and then have to read them throughout the month or I fail. And there's a forfeit of like having an extra book the next month. But I consider myself a mood reader. And I feel like people always put mood reader and TBR people at opposite ends of the spectrum. I don't think they are. I feel like I'm evidence that they can go quite nicely hand in hand. It doesn't always work, and I'm going to talk about why it hasn't worked for me recently. But I feel like it's an interesting discussion to be had about the differences between a mood reader and someone who likes a TBR, and at least from my perspective, and I'll very much say this is just from my perspective, that you can kind of do both and that there's different reasons for liking different sides of that, and it comes and it goes, but just because you're a mood reader doesn't mean you can't have a TBR. And just because you like having a TBR doesn't mean you don't also like mood reading. I don't know, this is a bit of an off-the-cuff video, this is not scripted, this is not planned. I'm just gonna chat, as I always do, just talk to you until I run out of things to say. So let's just get into it. So, trying to find a starting point for this, I would call myself a mood reader. And maybe my definition of mood reader is different to other people's, but basically, I pick up a book when I feel like I want to read it at that exact moment and that I'm in the right headspace to enjoy it. I will say now, sometimes having a TBR does limit my choices in being able to do this. And also, even outside of a TBR, I host a lot of book clubs and read-alongs, and so if I don't get those books read by certain dates, I'm in trouble. So I have to have certain books read by certain deadlines, and it does mean occasionally, am I feeling picking up that book? No. Am I gonna do it anyway because I have a live show coming up? Yes, and you just have to suck that up. But overall, I am a mood reader. It's one of the reasons why I keep my TBR relatively small in the month. I try and limit it to around 6, maybe 7 books, because in an average to good month, I will read 8 to 10. It's been a bit lower recently, though stupidly high in March, but that's kind of my average, so I normally have at least a bit of space to pick up random books. But I also never, ever read books in a set order. I don't set the order I'm reading in and then have to stick to it. It's my biggest pet peeve in readathons, when you have to pre-declare your TBR in an order. I hate it, because especially if I'm told to read them in a certain order, I don't want to. And also, my reading tastes change so rapidly. I very much say that the core of my reading is fantasy, closely followed by contemporary, and that is true, but that proportion flicks back and forth. So I will have 6 months where I read almost exclusively fantasy. I'll then have 6 months where I read almost exclusively contemporary. It really switches back and forth, and what I don't want to do is find myself flipping into a contemporary moment with only fantasy books available to me. And sometimes this happens, but I at least then have the space in my TBR and my time to slot in a few contemporary books to kind of keep me going through all the fantasy that I'm not necessarily feeling in that moment. So having a pre-declared order of my TBR, worst nightmare, can't do it. However, I do often take my TBR and plan when in the month I think I'm going to read each book. That's just for my sake, so if I go completely off-piste, it doesn't matter. Like, for example, my TBR at the moment, I had a whole plan of this week I was going to read Sister Song and Truth Witch, and next week I was going to read The Day of the Triffids and Blackwings Beating. I've barely read any of Truth Witch, I've not even picked up Sister Song, and I just yesterday picked up Blackwings Beating. I'm going completely off-piste because I know I have the space and the flexibility to do that, and also, I knew that Truth Witch wasn't intriguing me. I'm too intimidated by Sister Song to pick it up at the moment. So pick up the book I want to. I'm always going to do that, and that's why I very much call myself a mood reader, and I say never, that's not true. I try to never let my TBR rule my life. Again, if I have a commitment, I have to read the book. So, I mean, even that I'm not doing particularly well at the moment because life has been just too crazy to even do that. But for example, I'm hosting Strange-along in April and May, so I will read Strange the Dream this month. Luckily, I really want to. But even if I didn't, I've announced it, I've said I'm doing it, the live show date is set, I've got other people engaged with it, I will do it. There is no question that will get done. And that's important, to do things like that and keep me on track. But therefore I have to leave a TBR with enough space for flexibility because, as I've said a million times, I'm a mood reader. I hate having, and again, sometimes it's necessary, but I hate having to pick up a book I'm not in the mood for. Because I know, other than the fact I won't enjoy it and it'll probably slow me down, it's more likely that I then won't like the book. And that's not fair to anyone. That's not fair to the author. That's not fair to my review. It's not fair to you guys because you're not getting my honest opinions of the book. You're getting a jaded opinion of the book, which is seriously just not what you're looking for. You want to know if it's something I would enjoy. It may well be something I would enjoy, but I won't enjoy it in that moment if I don't want to read it. So that's kind of the starting point. I guess the other side of this, I don't know if I'm going to have enough to say for a whole video, but we're just going to keep talking. The other big side of this is if I'm a mood reader, why do I have a TBR game? Because like, again, I have these like necessary books I have to read each month that have for book clubs or read-alongs or whatever. And those alone would form a pretty coherent list of books to read. So why the hell do I have a TBR game which could add a lot of extra books to my TBR for the month on top of those ones? Other than fun, I like playing my TBR game. The main reason I have it, two reasons. Number one, I am horrifically indecisive. Even when I have a list of 6 books I need to read in the month, it will sometimes take me half an hour, days to pick out which one I want to read next. I am so indecisive. I find it very hard to assess what I'm feeling. I sometimes get really stuck where I'm like, I don't know if I'm feeling any of them, but maybe I actually just don't know what I'm feeling. And it's a mess. It's just a mess. So that in itself is a thing. And that's my main reason for having a TBR game, is that it selects books for me. And obviously I still get choice within it. I can fit my mandatory books into that list. I can choose books that I'm currently feeling interested in at the time of selecting my TBR. Like, I'm not completely forced to pick a book I just really don't want to read. And I have actually taken certain prompts out of my TBR game for exactly that reason. For example, I had lowest rated, and every time it came up I was just miserable because I didn't want to read that book. So I've removed things like that from my game, and I do tailor it to being forced to pick up things, which is going to be the second reason, but also still getting quite a lot of freedom of choice. But it also makes me feel less bad about picking up non-mandatory books because I've put them on my TBR, so at that point I have to read them. Even if they're not for a book club or a read-along or a video, it actually kind of makes me pick up a wider variety, and this is the second reason. It makes me pick up things I didn't think I would or wouldn't normally, especially things that have been on my TBR for a long time, and things which are a little bit outside of my comfort zone maybe, or things that I've just been putting off for a long time. And it doesn't always work this way. Sometimes I will pick my whole TBR out of books I've bought in the last week because I just really want to read them, and that's also fine. But I like that it gives that space to encourage me to pick up something a little bit different, because that's definitely something I struggle to do. Like all of us, I am very content to stick with the, you know, really exciting new books I've just got. But I have so many I've had for so long, and I have like series, which I'm putting off continuing, and I keep starting new ones. So I have a prompt for continuous series, and all of these prompts, my TBR game as a whole, it's just a really good way for me to broaden my reading quite a lot, which I really enjoy. I love reading a wide variety. As I say, fantasy and contemporary are my two main genres. They're already quite different to each other, but I also love dystopian, and I'm getting to love sci-fi, and I can't even think of other genres because my brain's a bit mushy, but I love reading a variety. If I have to read 5 fantasy books back to back, I normally get pretty bored. I love mixing it up. I love keeping things interesting. And so having something like a TBR game will make me do that more than I would for myself. So those are my 2 key reasons for having a TBR game. 1, indecision. It forces me to pick some books, and then I have a smaller list to be indecisive between instead of the like 200 books I have in my flat. And then secondly, broadening my horizons and forcing me to read more interesting things. But I cannot stress enough, I do this in a mood readery way. You have all seen me in my TBR game. I bend the rules to my liking every 5 seconds. If there is a book I want to get onto my TBR, I will find a way within that game. So I'm never limiting myself, or almost never limiting myself, by my TBR game, and that's the level I like to be at. The other key reason I enjoy having a TBR game as opposed to just mood reading is motivation. I am an extraordinarily goal-driven person, like extraordinarily. If I don't have a goal, I probably won't do much of anything. And maybe that's a bad thing. Maybe I should find some intrinsic motivation, but you know what? We're gonna go with it. I know I'm goal-driven, so I may as well set myself goals. And those goals don't have to be big things. The goal can be taking something off a to-do list. So if it's on a to-do list, I'm 10 times more likely to do it than if it isn't, because then I get to put a little tick next to it, and that's very satisfying. So I know I'm goal-driven. If I say to myself, I think I can read 6 books this month, there is little that will stop me finishing a book and going on TikTok all day. And I do this even with a goal, so you know. But there is nothing that will stop me doing that, because if I don't hit 6 books, who will know? It doesn't matter. Whereas if I say like, I'm gonna read 6 books this month, these are the 6 books, if I don't do it, I get a forfeit, and I've declared that publicly, you've all seen it, I need to stick to it. I am so much more likely to get through them all and actually stick to the books I said I would read, because I kind of have to. And it seriously increases my chances of reading lots. Not that quantity is the important thing, but I do personally quite enjoy reading quite a lot of books. That's just my personal preference. It's not the most important. It's important to me, and that's completely fine. So as I said, it both massively increases my chances of reading lots, and also increases my chances of sticking to reading the books I really want to. And it's a really good way, if I have a book in mind that I like need to read, it's a really good way for me to get it on my TBR and make me actually read it if I put it on Dart Attack. I am quite careful to not put too intimidating books on my Dart Attack TBR, because if I do that, then I do run into the problem of forcing myself to read something I don't want to read. It slows me down, I often get into a reading slump, and then I don't read anything, and that's pointless. So I do try and make sure that my mandatory books of the month, be it for book clubs, read-alongs, Dart Attack, are books I want to read. I'm at least in some way interested in, or at least are ones that I really want to get done, even if they're not ones I'm like really in the mood for, so that I have like a good motivation to get through each one instead of purposefully cramming it full of books I don't actually really want to read at the time, and then just shooting myself in the foot when I fall into a reading slump 2 weeks into the month. And I think I've already said, occasionally having a TBR bites me in the ass. Sometimes it really does. Like this month, I have had a really hard month and I'm exhausted because of it. And due to that, when I'm really exhausted, all I want to read is contemporary and romance. My whole TBR is fantasy, because that's what I'm in the mood for when I'm not feeling utterly shite. So I have fallen into a bit of a problem, but I'm making ways around it by spending, you know, one day reading a really quick YA contemporary and then moving back to the fantasy books. And those are the kind of strategies I know I have the time and space to do, because I don't fill up my whole TBR with mandatory TBR game books. Sometimes I do. Obviously, if TBR game is really wrong and I end up with 10 books, I'm screwed. I just have to suck it up. But I really do try and avoid that happening. I try and keep it small, I try and keep it limited, I try and keep it filled with books I'm excited for. I then have a free pass to not read for videos, not read for book clubs, and just read the books on my TBR. And I also live with the knowledge that there is space to read extra. So if I've got 6 books on my TBR, I know realistically, unless something goes really wrong or those books are huge or something like that, that I have at least 2 spots that I can fill with something else. And that can be a quick YA contemporary, it could be graphic novels. Graphic novels are also a lifesaver when I'm feeling slumpy. Just all of this. I don't really know what I'm saying, but I feel like my point here is mood reader and TBR are not exclusive. I feel like people are so dead set in that you're either a mood reader or you're someone who likes having a TBR. And some people are just one of those things. They just want to pick up what they want to read next, versus they only want to have this really defined TBR, maybe even the order set, and just read their way through it. Both of those, completely fine. But there is also a middle ground where you really enjoy having a list of books. It gives a benefit to you. For me, as I said, it's being indecisive, it's pushing my boundaries, and it's also motivating me with goals. But you also want the flexibility and the space to just choose what to read when you want to read it. And I feel like, although I love the book community so wholeheartedly, I mean, it's why I'm here, I do feel like sometimes we grab these definitions of ourselves so strongly that we then forget to just do what we want to do. So if you want to have a TBR game and use it to pick 2 books a month just to give yourself something to aim towards or push your boundaries and like put really awkward prompts on them, like out of your comfort zone, or worst rated if that's what you want to get things off of your TBR, or second chance book, or a book you have to unhaul if you don't read it, whatever it is, if you want to use it for that purpose, to like stretch yourself for a couple books, then read whatever you want, great. If you want to choose your whole TBR from a TBR game with either easy or hard prompts just to like have some fun and then read them if you feel like it, don't if you don't, also fine. Like I sometimes almost feel like even if I'm going into a month where I'm not going to read anything and I know it's just going to be a month of mood reading, I'll still play Dart Attack because it's fun and I like the process of creating a TBR. If I go completely off piste and don't read any of them, so be it. I kind of just don't care. I'll just suck that up. Obviously I don't like failing my TBR. I just get very frustrated towards the end of last year because I had failed every single TBR so far. I then made the sensible decision to limit how many books I was putting on my TBR a little bit more, and all of a sudden I've succeeded 3 months in a row. It's going way better for me. And now that I have less time due to my job and therefore less brain capacity free, having those decisions pre-made is saving my life. Also, I travel a lot. If I had to choose every week which like 2 or 3 books to take with me, it would kill me. I only have 6 to choose from. I just take half and I'll be fine. Literally, I love having a TBR, but I'm a mood reader. You can do both. I don't know if that's my point in this video, but we're gonna claim that's the point of the video. So that's a rambly mess, but I think that's my point. You can do both. You can enjoy both. I enjoy both. There's benefits and pros and cons to having a defined TBR versus just reading what you want when you want it. But don't feel like you have to exclude yourself from one of those 2 camps. So if you have a TBR, don't feel like you can't go off piste and mood read. If you're a mood reader, don't feel like you can't set yourself a challenge or just set yourself a list because it might keep you going a bit. Do what you want, read what you want, twist the rules to your liking is my general ethos with reading, and we're gonna echo it here. So that's my very rambly video, which I'm not actually sure was coherent or made a good point, but we're gonna go with it anyway. So that's it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a thumbs up. Please comment down below your take on this. I would love to know whether you're a mood reader, whether you like your TBR, if you like both, how you balance them, why you enjoy them. Would love to have this discussion in the comments. Subscribe if you'd like to see more content. Subscribe if you'd like to see more content from me. Linked down below are the links to all of my other social media, as well as the book clubs and read-alongs that I host, as well as the readathon I will be hosting in June, and my wishlist and my Patreon if you want to check out any of that. But that is it for the video, so bye, and I'll see you in the next one.